I'm often shocked at how little of a priority sometimes we put on ourselves and on this instrument that God has given us to fulfill his mission.
Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Beyond Biohacking Brothers, where I'm joined usually by my blood brother Miguel, Dr. Rudy, and another one of our adopted brothers, our friend and mayor, Francis Suarez. And we're so excited to have him on the podcast. And we're just going to talk all things health and optimization and how Francis keeps it together in his personal life. So Francis, man, thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Spending the time with us.
You know, this is a subject I'm very passionate about.
Yes.
You know, it's one that I spend a lot of my time and energy talking about. And I think it's frankly looking into the future, something that, and I think we've talked about this before, it's going to define more and more health, wellness, and it's going to be a massive industry. So, when you think about a city, I think of it as an ecosystem, right? And I think of, you know, the 500,000 people that live in my city. You know, I'm concerned about their health. I'm concerned about their wellness. I'm concerned about their mental health, right? And I think all of these things are interrelated. And so it doesn't get talked about enough. It's something that I've wanted to emphasize.
For sure. Listen, you are definitely the fittest and best looking politician in politics. So you caught our attention for sure. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation with you and your care for the community. I mean, you're the first Miami-born Miami mayor. And, you know, I've known you since high school. For clarity, I've known Francis since we played in the same soccer team together.
Yes.
And just so I can separate, you know, you from the politician, Francis Suarez. And you're a guy that really deeply inspired me. And part of what I do, my work, I remember him sophomore year. You know, he was the president of the class when you were in school. And he came back after he had graduated, and I was like, what's this guy doing here? I mean, go live your life. Don't be such a dork. You know, I was judging. And then he gave this speech to us in a history class, Miss Bush, God bless her soul.
I love Miss Bush. I loved her.
And he just gave this amazing speech about how to prepare for the future. And so you've done this since we were kids, man, and you continue to do that. And so I wanted to thank you for that and admire and honor you for that, because that's kind of what inspired me. Because when he left, I was like, I was judging him, and he actually inspired me. I really like this guy.
I think, you know, part of our mission in life is to stay connected to institutions that really helped us. LaSalle for me was a very big part of my life. I came there almost accidentally and left there with lifelong friends. And so I've always stayed connected to the school. I was just recently at a football game where we beat our arch rival Belen 34-0. I got to throw a little shout out to LaSalle on that. But you know, it's important because, you know, to your point, you having an impact in life and living, in my opinion, a meaningful life, means trying to find all those different pockets of opportunities to be inspiring, right? And to teach and to learn, because I learn a lot. I learn about as much as I try to impart in terms of knowledge, right? So it's really an honor to have inspired you when you were young, and it's an honor to be connected, and be connected now.
We're here, and kind of on the same mission. You know, I wanted to kind of bring up, give you some accolades. I mean, you're a mayor. You've been in office for a number of years. You know, you've cut taxes and crime to the lowest in the last 50 years, which is super impressive. You were named Times Future 100 leader and the 20th greatest leader in the world by Forbes Top 50, which is super impressive. Kudos.
Thanks, man.
You know, and so like a big thing for me is like, I know that you have a lot of social interactions. I mean, parties, you know, dinners, you travel like crazy, right? I know your schedule. And so for us, it's like, how do you keep it all together? Like, how do you think, like biohacking and, you know, health optimization has played into that success, not only psychologically, but physically, because you travel with all your stuff, you keep it together, you know, you have a schedule, you're crazy about your sleep routine. So, you know, I think that speaks volumes of people that are trying to get into this and trying to get healthy, but life gets in the way.
So I would say three things. I think the first is we underappreciate that our ability to be productive is based on a variety of factors and influences that we at some level control. Right. You know, how much sleep do we get is a good one. How well or poorly do we eat? Right. Do we exercise, and what are the benefits of that? Sort of the core, I call them the core things. Right. And so, that's number one. Number two is, you know, it's interesting. We don't realize, like, everything that we do comes from our body. And I know it sounds like almost like a silly self-fulfilling statement, but how much do we dedicate in terms of resources to keep that engine, right? Our engine, the only thing that produces for us going. And sometimes the answer is very little. You know, we spend money on cars, we spend money on houses, we spend money on trips, we spend money on a lot of things. How much money do we spend on ourselves? Right? On making sure that we're optimized for our performance, right? For our ability to make good decisions, right? Like, you know, when you're running a city, you're talking about a close to $2 billion enterprise with 4,500 employees, and I would say 500,000 shareholders. I say shareholders, but they're really 500,000 of residents that live, 500,000 souls, right? And so, you gotta bring it every day, man. You gotta be sharp.
For sure.
You gotta have energy. You can't come in to work like, oh, you know, today I feel like, you know, I'm just not that motivated. No, because everyone draws motivation and inspiration from you. If you're not motivated, if you're not in your A game, nobody, you know, people around you are not gonna be, like, to your point about inspiration. I always think of life as sort of there's gas tanks, right? And your spiritual gas tank is your spirituality and your inspiration, right? That's what gives you purpose. So, you know, when you think about that, I'm often shocked at how little of a priority sometimes we put on ourselves and on this instrument that God has given us to fulfill his mission.
Amen to that.
Right. And so for me, I've wanted to focus that on the policy side, because I think, and I've talked about it, I've done a lot of podcasts that are related to health and wellness and body hacking and all these things. Cause I think, again, that is what's happening today. That's where I think, frankly, medicine is gravitating towards.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. I mean, I have a lot of funny stories of, and I won't mention the doctors and I won't mention, you know, all of it, but I had a doctor once, and I'm not going to mention who it is or whatever, that was giving me a hard time about, you know, a protein powder that I was taking, right? Like that I was using some protein. And this particular person, to not even say the gender, was not in a good physical condition.
Right. Which is very common.
Which is very common amongst doctors, unfortunately. And again, not to disparage doctors. I have two brother-in-laws that are doctors, my father-in-law's a doctor, et cetera. And my thing to that person in my mind was, well, wait a second, I must be doing something right, because, you know, my biometrics are good. When I take blood, right, which I do on a regular basis, you know, my cholesterol's good, you know what I mean? All these things are good.
Your metabolic markers are great.
My metabolic markers, all those things. So, you know, I must be doing something right. Right. And I think part of it is there is an inflection point. Medicine is transitioning, and it's happened sort of the hard way, right? In that we're going from a place where we were trying to cure already existing conditions to a place where we want to avoid and prevent getting to that place. And I think, and then that's one piece, right? Just sort of health on that side. I think the other piece is energy. The other piece is longevity, right? We want to live long, fulfilling lives. We want to be able to, at 80, I want to be able to 80 to be able to spearfish. Is something that I love to do. I'm a big spear fisherman. I want to be able to do that at 80.
Spearfishing granddad.
Yeah, I'm at 46. I want to be able to do it when I'm 80. When I'm 80, I want to be able to pick up my hopefully great granddaughter, great grandson, and you know, pick them up over my head, right? And not be, and so I think about those things. And then my dad, who's, God bless him, he's 75 years old. He's in amazing shape. You know what I mean? I don't know how he does it. I take a lot of inspiration from him, because he's, you know, he has almost a full head of hair, like no canitas. He doesn't paint his hair. You know, this is a guy genetically who has a lot of gifts, but he works out. You know what I mean? He was telling me yesterday how he went running, you know, and he's 75 years old. So you do have to put in the effort and musculature. There's a lot of good science and literature out there on how exercise, racket sports, musculature, all that stuff creates better quality of life and more longevity.
100%.
So this is such a good segue, for me talking about medicine and the way you approach this from a policy standpoint. Our approach is from a medical standpoint. And the more we can have people having that same mindset, that would help. So I'm a kind of a local product also. I'm originally from Haiti, which I have to say that,
of course,
Haiti, we can give a lot of great products also.
Of course, 100%.
I
The Haitian sensation.
Listen, we have a thriving Haitian community, and it's part of what makes us special.
Completely. I went to University of Miami, then I trained at Jackson. So I've been in the community. Then I started working at Baptist Hospital in the hospital where I was doing hospital medicine, saving lives. But what I realized is we're not good at preventing disease. And what you're talking about aligns so much with what we're doing. And that's why we're excited to come in today, because I made my transition from acute medicine to now preventive medicine. And preventive medicine is where the best direction for healthcare is, because it's not sustainable. The rates of chronic disease that we're seeing, the metabolic disease, cardiovascular disease, cancer. And at the end of the day, the doctors can do whatever they want. The policy, the politicians can do whatever they want, but it rests in the individual power. So we're here to empower people, to let them, I like to say that each one of us needs to become the chief medical officer of their own health.
I love that.
Take charge.
I love that concept. No, and look, I think from a policy perspective, taking out the personal aspect of wanting to see how your citizens live energetic lives, productive lives, full lives, right? And we all know also, I think you would say as a doctor, that there is a definite correlation between physical health and mental health, right? So I think, one of the things that let's talk about policy in terms of medical cost, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about, I remember a statistic my dad once told me, I forget what percentage, it's a massive percentage of healthcare costs are spent in end of life sort of treatment, right? And we have to look at that. We have to look at, hospital costs and hospitalization costs, which are super expensive, right? And healthcare costs generally, it's probably one of the largest drivers of our economy, right? Healthcare costs. So if we can do some of the stuff that you're talking about on the preventative side, we can dramatically reduce some of our back end costs. And almost everything that I've analyzed on the policy space usually is when you spend money prophylactically, right? Whether it's resiliency, whether it's health, you save a huge multiple, right? Call it 5 times, 7
100%.
times, 10 times on the back end, whether it's after a disaster. If you spend money making the building, if you will, the person stronger, you save money after the hurricane comes or after the disease tries to come. So one of the little things that we've done, and I say little because it's something we would love to scale nationally, but we're focusing on is just exercise. Right. So, I happen to do CrossFit, but I also do functional and heavy weightlifting and all that stuff on a regular basis. And we realized that these gyms for kids were prohibitively expensive. So $100, $200 a month. For kids in the inner city, they just can't afford that. So we're working with CrossFit, the brand. We're working with Rogue, the brand, and working with our parks department to try to train some of our parks employees to become certified and be able to have these classes. Why? 3 things. These mass shootings. Let's just use mass shootings as an example. What's happening? You have kids that are lonely, that are depressed, right? And that feel ostracized, right, by society. When you look at a CrossFit class, and it doesn't have to necessarily be CrossFit, it could be Orange Theory, it could be a variety of other exercises. You do 3 things. One is you have community, right? Like these people join a class, they come in there and they're, it's a very welcoming environment. Anybody who's been to a CrossFit gym knows that it's a very welcoming environment. Number 2, one of the biggest issues or drivers of suicide or of these mass shootings are in the inability to deal with adversity. Okay. You have, you're getting picked on at school. You're lonely. This is an adverse situation. And when you do CrossFit, these workouts are tough. There's a moment where you want to quit.
Fortitude.
Whatever the exercise is, there's always a moment where you want to quit, or there's a moment where you don't even want to go. Right. And you have to overcome that in your mind. So you have to overcome adversity. And there is listen, we both went to the same high school, but neither you nor I took an adversity class.
Right. No.
right? And we've had a lot of adversity in our lives, right? And you've got to manage that adversity and deal with that adversity and overcome that adversity. It requires you to bring to bear a lot of things together: your spirituality, your belief in yourself, all these things. But certainly overcoming adversity on a daily basis and exercise is a tool. And then the third thing is these feel-good chemicals, right? Like people get addicted to opioids. I mean, it's an incredible scourge in our community. Yeah. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people that die because of opioids, that the fentanyl that comes in through our southern border. Mm-hmm. And you're getting endorphins, you're getting serotonin, you're getting all of these feel-good chemicals when you work out. And that obviously reduces the dependency need because you're getting those chemicals in a natural way, as opposed to in a synthetic way.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's estimated that roughly 24% of our nation's kids are experiencing depression because they're on iPhones. They're being exposed. Our circadian rhythms are so off that these neurotransmitters and catecholamines are fully depleted. So the exercising aspect of it, when you say endorphins, they behave like opiates. Like you're getting this 100%. Natural infusion of these chemicals that we're losing because of all the technology that we have today.
But to go back to a question that Carlos asked that I kind of glossed over, didn't really answer, how do I make it work?
Yeah.
Like as a human being, running this, multi-billion-dollar company, being in the private sector and having a variety of different
traveling
and all that. And it really comes down to one word. And I saw this interesting reel. I'm a little bit of a reel junkie and probably getting a serotonin hit on that, right? It comes down to discipline.
Yes.
It comes down to discipline. And discipline is the sacrifice of short-term gain for long-term gain, right? And sort of I heard this really beautiful reel where it says something like, if you really love yourself, you will always opt for doing things that are in your best long-term interest rather than your best short-term interest. No. And I think
which kind of it's sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
It's counterintuitive how we're living now. Everybody's for that short-term gain, that instant gratification. And you touched on a subject that's really important to us. Like we talk a lot about ancestral living, right? Yeah. So the picking up heavy things, working out, chasing your food, and then community.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. And the thing that I think kind of isolates us is we're addicted to these phones. It's like we have a relationship with our phone, but we don't have a relationship with people.
Yeah, and that's a struggle for everybody. I mean, I certainly, one of the things I try to do, and my wife is really good at reminding me, is when I get to the dinner table with my kids, put the phone somewhere else. No, not even put the phone down. Put the phone somewhere else.
Box. Somewhere else.
Put it somewhere else. Yeah. Because if it's even within reach, you're going to have that temptation to grab it. And I read somewhere that if you put the phone on the table, the signal you're sending to everybody in the table is you're not as important as that thing, or that is equally important to everybody because it has a place at the table. Right. So one of the things that we started to do is either put it on the ground or put it away. So just to give the people I'm having dinner with or a meal with the impression that whatever's on there is not as important as they are. And it also helps me on focus, which frankly, when we talk about all these things in terms of hacking, right? Focus for me is a huge component of that. How do I get up in the morning, not just have energy, because energy is, the ability to bring that sort of, wavelength to the table. But how do I also have focus? Right? How can I sit there and listen attentively, make good decisions, and have good ideas? Right? And that all goes to how can you be disruptive? When you talked about some of these KPIs, and I appreciate you bringing them up at the beginning of the conversation. Sure. Last year we had the lowest per capita homicide rate in history.
Yeah.
We had the lowest unemployment in history, the highest wage growth in history. We've created thousands of high-paying jobs in this community. A lot of that is byproducts of listening to other people, incorporating their ideas, being able to execute, but it requires focus, right? And it requires
just to be sure, I've been in Miami for 25 years, and the term that you have had, the growth that we have had in our
150% growth in 7 years.
But not only that, but you've brought so many events and the security, and it's been super safe and they've been super successful. So the growth that you've experienced, I love the fact, and just to kind of recap a little bit, because there was a lot to unpack.
Sorry.
First of all,
about this
no, I love it. I love the way that you process the fact that you're responsible for the energy that you bring in the room.
Amen.
And it has a spiritual component. and you view this body as the vessel that
100%.
brings that to the table so that you can lift other people around you, right? And at the same time, the way that you think about the city, not only people as souls, but also as like, hey, I'm running a company. Like, I need to make this company profitable for the people that are invested, which is the people that live here.
Yeah, and on the biohacking front, just to go back into that, I also love the sort of experimentation of it insofar as, I'm trying to get the most out of myself, focus, energy, drive, et cetera, and memory, et cetera, right? And so, you're always trying to figure out, there's a scientific process here, right? And you're always trying to figure out what is the best science, what's the healthiest thing.
That's what we're here for.
And that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun for me, right? Like for me, it's something that interests me.
Part of your lifestyle.
Yeah, and I also think that I really honestly believe that going forward, it's going to be so mainstream, right? And it's going to be part of this, like you said, doctor, this metamorphosis of change in medicine and how we approach health. It's already happening. A lot of it, unfortunately, is for some people that are just ultra wealthy and have the means. And I think part of the fun and the enjoyment will be democratizing this, to seeing it democratize and seeing it change outcomes, but also change expense outcomes, massive expense outcomes that are huge.
As I like to say, your resources are your money and your wealth, but your true assets are your health, your relationships, and your youth, right?
But it's also prioritization. Like, what do we focus our wealth, whether it's limited or whether it's unlimited, right? There's a lot of people that have a lot of money, but there's a lot of people that have limited amounts of money. But what are you investing in? Are you investing in yourself to get more out of yourself? Or are you investing in external things that are material in nature that, are shiny, they're cool, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But do they really change your life?
Right. It's funny what you just said, because a lot of times, like, we'll have patients and they'll come and be like, they'll see doc, and then they'll go through us, and we'll put the programs together for them based on like what they need. Right. Be like, oh, this is kind of expensive. I'm like, listen, I promise you bring me your last 2 credit card statements, and I promise you that you're spending twice the amount on stuff that's killing you and driving you further away from your goal than closer to it. So it's about that perspective that a lot of people don't want to invest in themselves. They want to invest in external things.
Well, but it's if you don't mind, because yes, investing is good, but something you said, Mayor, that's so important: mastering the basics. Yes, you can have some people who will invest some. There's people who may not be able to invest anything. Right. But mastering the basics of nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management, and something, May, I'm going to give you so much credit for. You talk a lot about spirituality, because we are mind, body, and 100%. Spirit. 100%. And even me as an MD, when I talk to my patients and I bring spirituality, sometimes they raise their eyebrows. But you know what? If we don't talk about the light being, the spiritual being, we lose 50% of healing. So a lot of congratulations to you, because you focus on the body, the physical body, but also the spiritual body with all this.
Yeah. And just to touch on that a little bit, because I think it's important. Your mental health, right? I think it relates to 2 main pillars. One of them is obviously your physical health, right? In terms of it's hard to feel mentally good if you're physically tired, if you're physically drained, if you're physically stressed, right? Those are physical things that impact your mental state. But the other part is spiritual. What is your purpose, right? We're going to get attacked in life. I've gotten attacked many, many times in my life, and it makes you have to reanalyze, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right purpose? Am I having the right focus? Do I need to change? Do I need to pivot? You know what I mean? And that is a spiritual exercise, right? Because
introspection, for sure.
It's introspection, but it's also, spiritual, right? Like you're reflecting the criticism. So that's introspection, but you're also saying, hey, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I trying to achieve? And why am I trying to achieve it? Right? So, I think those things are all profound. And just to go back a little bit to the core, because I'm glad you brought that back into the equation, because I really do think, a lot of things give us, let's call it marginal benefits, right? But the core things are things that if you don't do those things, it's even hard to sort of hack your way out of that, right? It's hard to hack your way out of no sleep. Right? It's hard to hack your way out of no exercise. It's hard to hack your way out of terrible diet, right? So I think those things are fundamental, and frankly, anybody can do those things, right? So let's start there from a democratizing perspective. Anyone can focus on, hey, I need to get X amount of sleep, which means maybe you have to go to bed a little early.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that I sometimes struggle with. And depending on where I'm flying, right? Like with time zones, etc. Exercise. I schedule exercise like I schedule this podcast, like I schedule
time
any
with
meeting.
yourself.
It's equally important, right? It's talking about the phone and creating. It's equally important to me. It is an equal function. If I'm meeting with a CEO of a massive, $1 trillion fund, that person's going to get an hour of my day or whatever, 30 minutes of my day. If I'm meeting with some, elderly person in Little Havana, that person's going to get an hour of my day or whatever. And my workout is going to get an hour of my day, right? Like, I'm not going to treat, these infinitely important things in my life, the constituent, the person who can create high-paying jobs, or my health, any different. Right. And so I think that's from a prioritization perspective, and talking about juggling, right? You have to give it that level of importance. Yeah. So that's when people say, like, I'm too busy to work out. I mean, I think it's fun. Yeah. Do I think there are circumstances within moments where it's harder to work out? Absolutely, of course. Yeah. Some days I have a day where I have 15 meetings. Right. And today was a great example. I usually work out in the morning. It's 9/11, right? And I know we don't usually contextualize podcasts for days, but it's September 11th today. And we had a ceremony that was time specific, and it was when I would normally work out. I'm going to that ceremony. It's 9/11.
Of course.
It's a day of remembrance of a tragic occurrence. So maybe I'll be able to work out today, later, and maybe I won't. Maybe I'll miss a day, which is not the end of the world, but
they're outliers.
They're outliers. And I also think, you and I have talked about this a lot, Carlos, particularly with travel. I actually think sometimes we can overtrain and not be sensitive to our central nervous system, right? We are a system. And if we're not getting adequate sleep, if we're not, because of our travel, because of our lifestyle, sometimes we do have to dial back a little bit, right? You can't do that hour and a half, super intense workout that's going to kill you, or it's going to make things worse, right? Sometimes you got to do 20 minutes to maintain.
But do something.
And 20 minutes, but not fry the CNS, right?
Like we actually spoke this weekend at a longevity conference that exercising intelligently, where you can literally do 20 minutes twice a week and totally have transformative results. Yeah. So it's not about going to the gym every single day for hours on ends. It's just keeping a consistent routine for a specific amount of time. Data shows roughly 6 months. So I'd rather you work out once or twice a week for 6 months, and eventually you'll develop the habit, 100%. And then that creates discipline, and it has that whole
but I tell people that all the time. People I was doing these for a long time, these Mayor's Fitness challenges, where I was doing them online, and people would call me and, hey, how do I get started? I go, listen, my humble opinion is start embarrassingly slow. Like embarrassingly slow.
That's awesome.
Like I tell people, even particularly people in my parents' generation, when they see me or they see these fit challenges and they're like, hey, I just don't know where to start. I go, do something embarrassingly little to get started, but do it consistently, right? So get up from your chair, go to the end of the block and come back. Yeah, that's day one.
That's it.
That's day one. The next day, it's the same thing. Do it for a week. The next week, go, one more, right? And then, and little by little, because what a lot of people do, and I've seen this in my wife, I've been married for 17 years. And she started working out with me.
Which is also an amazing success.
Thank you. It is. And I'm blessed. She's an amazing person. Yeah. And we were married for 17 years, and she started working out with me about 3 or 4 years ago. And now she works out with me very consistently, right? And
damn, I need those tools.
No, but she started slow. And she had never worked out in her life. So this is not something like, I've always been a fitness junkie. Yeah. I've loved fitness since I was 15 years old. Yeah. Once I got in the weight room for the first time, I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And I just love it. I just enjoy it.
You were a firecracker on the soccer team, man.
No, but I just enjoy tremendously working out. Like it's my happy place, right? So, but that's not necessarily what it is for everybody else. Yeah. And for her, she just started very, very slow. And now there'll be days where I'm traveling and she's working out without me, right? It wasn't like me driving her to do it. Mm-hmm. So it becomes, like you said, a habit. You're right, but you got to start embarrassingly slow. That's what I always tell people.
And if I can harp on one thing that I see that you have in your campaign on your website, the word resilience. Yes. Everything we're talking about here goes back to resilience because it goes back to your mindset. Mm-hmm. The way I put it, I call it the no matter what mindset. Yeah. Because we are going to have obstacles. We are going to have attacks against us. How do you take all of this negativity and focus still on your goal? As you were saying, when you have your purpose.
Yeah.
You know who you are, your values, you can do it.
Look, I think politics is in a pretty toxic place. I think that's a pretty neutral statement. I mean, I don't think it's controversial to say that. There are levels of it in terms of the intensity, right? I ran for president for a short period of time, and that was very, very intense. So and the scrutiny was unbelievable in ways that I would have never imagined. And I think a lot of it was unfair, but that's also part of it, is the unfairness of it, and the having to reconcile and be resilient to that. Life is not always fair, right? Things will not always go your way. And when that happens, who are you? No. Right? Like what kind of,
that's profound, man.
What are you going to do? Because it's like everything in life. You can sink or you can swim, right? You have a choice. And I think those are the moments where, frankly, your personal relationships, my wife, my children, my family. I always say, people ask me a lot of times, like, a variation of the question that Carlos asked, like, what makes you successful? If I can consider myself a success. And I'd say one of my biggest reasons for success is my support system. Just like my staff, right? Like the team that you have around you is a massive, and sometimes we don't give those people enough credit. You know what I mean? The fact that my wife and I have been married for 17 years, the fact that, all of our siblings on my side and her side married first marriages. Very, very unusual. My parents and her parents have been married for 40 plus years, right? There's a stability in our family that helps. I have a lot of the same friends that I've had since high school, since junior high school, since elementary school, right? And so those people care about me and love me not because I'm the mayor of Miami. They don't care the fact that I'm the mayor of Miami. In fact, sometimes it's annoying to me, right? It really is. Those are the guys that are going to want to drink a beer with me, or have, I know we don't drink beer in Healthy World, but, are going to want to have, once in a while. They're going to want to have, they're going to want to spend time with me, irrespective of anything, right? Anything I've accomplished, any position I have, because it's not about that. It's about the relationship. But if you don't have those relationships, and then your spirituality, which is your anchor, if you don't have your spirituality, it can be overwhelming. And I think that's why what we're trying to create, whether it's what you guys are doing, whether it's what I'm trying to do at the city, or whether it's technology that I see. I saw a great technology recently, a Miami guy who has a technological company on creating emotional assets and emotional curriculum for kids. We don't do anything. I mean, everything is math, science, but we're not teaching kids how to connect, emotional lessons, right? How to become more emotionally mature, how to deal with adversity, how to be more resilient, et cetera.
And that's amazing that you say that, because, I know that you're short of time. It's 9/11. You got a ton of things to do. So thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Of course,
this was
great to be with you.
Profound to get to know your mind a little bit on this. But, the reason why it's interesting you say that is because, now you got political figures like Robert Kennedy Jr., who is on the world stage, talking about this epidemic of chronic disease, especially teenagers and children, which is on an all-time high. I mean, it would have been preposterous 40 years ago to even suggest the amount of disease that we have in these kids. And I think a lot of it is because of the incentives are in the right place. And you've been doing this for years. So, as we close out, what do you think we can do to help you help other people? Like, where are the incentives, and what's next for, Francis, as you close out your term next year?
Well, I think one of the things that's beautiful about the world we live in today is so much of the information out there is free. You guys do a free podcast. It's out there, right? You have your content is phenomenal, right? So you have, so the question is, how do we amplify that content? It's part of the reason why I'm doing the podcast. I want to give you guys some amplification in terms of what you're doing. I think that's part of it. Education is a huge part of it. And when we talk about food, right? Because he talks a lot about food. He talks about medicines and vaccines and things of that nature. I just think being on the cutting edge of the evolution of nutrition, being on the cutting edge of the evolution of the things that we put in our body, is something. And then, of course, like you said, you kind of alluded to it, but you're right. There's a lot of big interests, big moneyed interests. Right. And I think we're going to see a lot of those resources start to shift as you see these industries on longevity, on health, preventative health continue to grow. You'll see, because these guys, they want to make money at the end of the day, right? And so they're going to go from the preventative side, from the drug side, to the other side of how do we, create products that help people live longer, healthier, fuller lives. In terms of me, look, I'm a very spiritual person, man. And I think,
I know it. That's why I'm here.
Life is very circumstantial. I try to put in the best effort, try to be sort of the best version of myself, if you will, and then let God handle the rest. So we'll see where that takes me over the next year. I mean, I've been 16 years in, coming into my 16th year of public service. Yeah. It is 1/3 of my life. I thought about it the other day. I'm 46.
Thank you,
so
man.
one third of my life is dedicated to serving this community that I was born and raised in.
Thank you.
And that's very profound. At the same time, I would like to kind of go out on top. Right.
Yeah.
And you never want your residents to get tired of you. Time for the next guy. So I do think there's a moment where term limits are appropriate, and you say, hey, look, it's time to move on to another challenge, and let somebody else sort of do this and be on the sidelines, helping them, guiding them if they want your help and guidance, and playing a different role.
Oh, listen, man, I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been way more than I expected. So thank you.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Super profound. And, for all of you guys at home listening, we hope that you gain as much as we did. I'm here to tell you that whatever you do going forward, we're here to support you in any way, shape, or form, because, what you put out to the environment has been just amazing. And we just want to be part of your cause for sure.
Thank you.
And if you want to support any of Mayor's efforts, log on to his website and find out how you can help. For now, stay healthy.
And God bless.
God bless.
God bless.